which you will hear more about from our director, sitting on the head table over there, Craig Leeson, and our producer, Joe Ruxton, sitting there. What concerned us then, as it does now, is that we still believe plastic to be disposable. It is not. It is indestructible. 50% of all plastic in our oceans comes from just 5 Asian countries, and China tops the list. Plastic is not and never was disposable. It's time we stopped acting as though it is. We hope that the film, combined with our work in education, science, and policy, will change people's habits towards plastic, as well as engage communities and stakeholders in developing tangible and sustainable changes to address the issue. Thank you for being part of this change.
Well, thank you everybody for coming today. It's good to see lots of friendly faces. I will start with an apology. I had an operation on my mouth at the weekend. Bad timing. I've got 4 stitches there, so if I dribble more than usual, you'll know why. Before I begin, I really would like to acknowledge the work that the founders of the foundation, Joe and Sonia, please both stand up and give a big round of applause to these people. Joe and Sonia have done such great work, and they've sacrificed just about everything in their lives to bring this film to fruition and make this issue become a very public issue. And when they first started looking at it, nobody knew anything about it, and there was very little science. So they really started the trend, and that's what led to the film being made. And I'll talk about that, and I'll give you an understanding of how it was made. What I'll do before we start, though, is log on to my computer, and I'll show you the trailer, just so that you understand what we're talking about.
I remember the first time I saw a blue whale.
Oh, look.
Wow! I've followed them since childhood.
What do you think it's from? Is it from a ship?
I could see plastic everywhere. We were in what we thought was a relatively pristine environment. I started to wonder what was happening in oceans elsewhere on the planet. Growing up, my world was the ocean. It's where I feel the most spiritual.
As a freediver, it was the place where I proved myself to myself. Finally, have the opportunity to pay the sea back.
Only a fraction of the plastic that we produce is recycled.
This is never going to degrade. It's got nowhere to go.
This was something that these animals, they were forced to endure because it was man-made and we'd put it into their environment.
The record is 276 pieces of plastic inside of one 90-day-old chick.
If the plastics are in the food chain for the dolphin, they're also in our food chain.
Exactly. Communities are built on these landfill sites.
So sweet potatoes, corn, sugarcane, all growing on 40 years of garbage. Do you have anything not wrapped in plastic?
No.
We have to make our life better for our kids' children. Change is possible. It starts with us.
So that's our film. How did that come about? Let me show you. What I'm going to do is talk through a PowerPoint presentation which will explain pretty much how we got to where we are today. About 6 years ago, Joe Ruxton called me. I was in Hong Kong. She was in the UK, where she was working with the Natural History Unit with Sir David Attenborough and his team. And I'd worked with Joe on documentaries around Asia, on the pink dolphins and on the issue of cyanide and dynamite fishing on reef systems in Asia, when Joe worked for the WWF. And so we became good friends, and we both had a passion for the ocean. And Joe rang me and said, have you noticed any plastic in the ocean when you've been surfing or filming or diving? And I said, no, why? And she said, well, I'm looking into a problem which I found out from research that's coming through from a sailor who had gone through the North Pacific Gyre, which is this big ocean current that operates in the North Pacific. And when he sailed through there in the 90s, he found all of this plastic that to him was unusual. And in fact, he described it as a floating island of plastic as big as Texas. So Joe wanted to raise money to go and look at this issue, which she did. And she contacted Sonia, who helped her with that mission. But she asked me to have a look in my travels and see what I could find. And as soon as she told me that, and I started going out to the beaches and surfing and filming, all I could see was plastic. And it amazed me because I'd been in the same locations and I'd never seen this substance around me before. And I couldn't work out why until it dawned on me that I'd become so used to it and had been such a part of my life that it had basically disappeared from my vision. It wasn't until I realized that this was a problem that I started to understand we had a major issue on our hands. And the reason was, as Joe came back from this expedition, which was to the North Pacific Gyre, was in the data that they collected. Now, when they were there, this was what the water looked like. I mean, these are the divers that were in the water. It was clear. Very little plastic. The plastic that they found floating on the surface was a little bit bigger like this, but there was no real floating island of plastic as big as Texas. It was actually much worse than that. What they did was they floated these trawls, which are called manta trawls, and they have these nets behind them which collect microplastics. And what they suspected was that because of the nature of these gyres, which can take something that enters the gyres up to 20 years to get to the centre, that maybe the substance had broken up. And we say broken up because plastic is the most durable substance we've ever made. It cannot break down and biodegrade. So this is what Joe and the team of scientists found. Microplastics, tiny pieces that you can barely see with the naked eye. And this was alarming because if this plastic is that small, the question was how far into the food chain is it getting? And is it getting into the food chain? And what does that mean? So some of the trawls came up with bigger pieces, some smaller pieces. What they were finding in these trawls, and what scientists since have found, is that they're getting 8 pieces of plastic to every one marine organism, like plankton, which shows how prolific it is. And in fact, the count that they got after all their studies was 46,000 pieces of plastic to every square mile of ocean in the North Pacific Gyre. So Joe called me back and said, I'm coming to Hong Kong. Sonia's going to be there. We want to have a talk. And we sat down, and what we wanted to know was if the situation was this bad in the North Pacific Gyre, what was it like in the other 4 gyres around the world? Now, these gyres, these great ocean currents, are very important to the planet and to the way that every life is sustained on the planet. They're like the engine rooms of the Earth. They produce our ocean systems. They produce our weather patterns. They move food, protein, fish around so that we can eat and we can, through science, know where this protein's going to be, and fishing trawlers can pick it up. So what did it mean for the rest of the world? So Joe and Sonia asked me to direct the film. They went off and started raising money, which was no small feat because what they had planned and what we were planning was such a big task that it was going to cost a lot of money, and we didn't know what we'd find. We might find nothing. It might just be the North Pacific Gyre. So it was a massive gamble. There was very little science on the topic, so we didn't have anything to refer to. So we had to build a team of scientists who could come with us and do the science as we filmed it and collected it, so we could make our own conclusions. So how does this plastic get into the environment that we rely on to sustain life on Earth? Well, we're all familiar with the plastics that are within our lives. Plastic, when it was first produced, was actually plant-based. It was made out of cellulose. But scientists discovered in the 30s that if you made it with different molecules, you could bend it and you could turn it into all sorts of vessels that you could use to carry, hold, to wash things with. And so we became a plastic society. We were told that we could take all of these plastic items and use them, and they were disposable. Use it once. You never have to wash up again. Throw it away once you're done with it. Makes your life easy. Well, what's the reality of away? What does away really mean? This is the most durable substance ever made on the planet. It doesn't biodegrade. We're not really sure how long it would take for that to happen. Every piece of plastic ever made, unless it's been incinerated, is still on the Earth in some way, shape or form. And that's why we say when it gets into the ocean, it breaks up, not down. Because if you give someone the impression that it breaks down, they think it goes away. Well, this is the reality of away. And I'm sure we've all seen this, particularly in Hong Kong over the last 2 to 3 months. We've been inundated with this stuff. How does it get to our beaches? How does it come back at us? When we throw this away, and all we're doing by saying away is we're moving it away from us, so we're making it someone else's problem because it doesn't go away. But what happens is it collects in landfill areas. It collects in our rivers and our lakes, and our river systems deliver it. And this is a canal. This one's in Indonesia. We're finding these all over the world. Even the LA River has this problem. They deliver it into the oceans. And when they hit the ocean, they get into these gyres, and these gyres deliver around the world. We went to 20 different locations around the world, and we found plastic that had been manufactured from places on the other side of the planet. How did it get there? Well, it's moved. It breaks up and it moves around. Now, the problem with our plastic society and our plastic age is that plastic's very important to us. It's in everything. Glasses, on your table, your computers, your phones. We use it to manufacture our cars. This year alone, we're going to make 300 million tons of plastic, more than we've made in the last century. Half of that we're going to use just once, and then we're going to throw it away. Think about that. It's 150 million tons of plastic that's going to end up in the environment that we rely on to survive because we use it just once. And that's called single-use plastic. And that plastic has a lifespan on average of just 12 minutes. And a lot of this plastic you don't even know that you're using it because you go to the supermarket and you buy an apple and it's wrapped in plastic. Or is here, there's coconuts, they wrap them in plastic. Coconut has the most amazing natural packaging on Earth, yet we wrap it in plastic. Why? Why do we need to do that? We take these goods home, we unwrap the plastic, we throw it away, we eat the food. We might take it home in a plastic bag. There might be a water bottle in there that we drink. That gets thrown away. 12 minutes that lasts. And what happens is it ends up in the environment. And it mightn't initially do any harm to us, but it's causing harm in the first instance to the animals that we share this planet with. A great deal of problem. This is Mae West. Mae West is a snapping turtle that was found in Louisiana as a baby with you can see it, it's a ring tie which is through the middle of her shell there, which was off a milk bottle. You know when you undo a plastic bottle and there's that ring tie that attaches to the lid just to make sure that you know that what's inside is safe and hasn't been tampered with. Animals swim, they see these, they get interested in them, and they swim in between them. Mae West swam in between that. She was pregnant. She grew up, she was pregnant. You can see the eggs here. And she was found by Roy, who rescued her and took the ring off. And you can see there the ring's been taken off. And she was nursed back to health. And this is, if I can get this to go, you'll be able to see what she looks like now. But she is one of the lucky ones because not all animals manage It's not going to play for me. Anyway, we'll see if we can get it going later. She's pretty grumpy. This is Roy. This is Tanya Streeter, our freediver, who was the other explorer in the film. When we went to film Mae West, she got grumpy and she took the end of Roy's thumb off. So she's a very powerful animal now and one of those who survived. But many turtles aren't so lucky. Thousands of these animals are dying every year because their main diet is jellyfish. And when you get a plastic bag or a piece of plastic in the ocean floating around, what does it look like? It looks like a jellyfish. Turtles have an amazing digestive system. Their throat has these spikes that point upwards. So when they swallow something, once it's halfway down their throat, they cannot regurgitate it. They have to push it through. So even if they taste, once it's halfway in, that it's not what they normally eat, they have to go through the process and complete it. This is one turtle that's being able to expel the plastic out of its system, but not all of them are so lucky. Many of them, they have intestinal problems. It causes gas, which causes them to float on the surface. They become prey for tiger shark and other animals, or they die of starvation. We're finding them all over the world like this. This is what we found in one particular turtle, and you can see there's packing tape, piece of a clothes peg, garbage bag. Thousands of turtles are turning up like this. In fact, most turtles that scientists are opening up or doing necropsies are dying because of this problem. This is one of our scientists, and this is on Lord Howe Island, which is a World Heritage listed island 500 miles east of Sydney. It's also one of the major nesting sites for these little guys. This is a shearwater. Very heroic birds. As soon as they fledge and take off on the wing, they don't land for about 5 years. They fly sometimes as far up as to the Baltic Sea, and they mature, and then they come back pretty much to the same hole that they were born in, and they burrow, nest, and have babies. Now, the problem is they feed on fish, and they like objects that they've got a very keen sense of smell. And what scientists have been finding is that these birds have been dying on the beaches, and they didn't know why until they started opening them up. And this is what they were finding in their stomachs, hundreds of pieces of plastic. And in one of the birds that we opened up, we found 265 pieces of plastic, and that wasn't even a record. These birds are this big. When you find that amount of plastic in there, it's equal to about 6 kilograms of food in your stomach, which is about 12 pizzas. So you imagine eating 12 pizzas and that sitting in your stomach, how uncomfortable that is, and you can't then get rid of it. So most of them die of starvation. And they end up on the beaches of Lord Howe Island and other nesting sites around the world, or around Australia particularly. And this is what the scientists have been finding are killing them. But it's not just seabirds. These ghost nets are made of polypropylene. These are a major problem. You saw the monk seal in the trailer that was caught up in the polypropylene. They don't only entangle other marine species, but the fibres break off. And when they break off after they've been exposed to UV and to the action of the wind and the waves, they snap off into really tiny pieces. And that travels down the food chain and gets to the very base of the food chain. And there's the monk seal there, and he's at the start and end of our film, and I won't spoil what happens to him, but he's not the only one, okay? All the marine animals that we find that are ingesting plastics have two problems when they ingest them. The first is the fact that, so these are Leishan albatross. I'll get back to the fish in a minute. So these live on Midway Island, in the middle of nowhere. The nearest land mass is probably Hawaii, I think. And they're not exposed to a place that manufactures plastic anywhere near them. But their beach that they live in is covered in plastic. And their parents travel thousands of miles to feed, to pick up fish. And what they're picking up, like the shearwater, is not just fish, but plastic, because scientists think that when the plastic's in the water for a long time, it smells like a marine organism because algae grows on it and fish lay eggs on it. And they're also shiny, so they replicate a lot of the looks that the small fish and their prey have. Now, these are big birds. The babies are about this high, and they're finding hundreds of them dying on the beaches, and it's because of starvation. This was what was found in one of the stomachs. There's a lighter, fishing gear. You can see there a plastic elephant. These are big pieces of plastic. You can imagine the stress that these animals are feeling when they ingest this material. 5.25 million pieces of plastic in the world's seas. Five Guys and other scientific organisations are estimating that's how much we're putting into the world's oceans. 8 million tonnes every year, and that's increasing. What does that mean? What does that even look like? Well, if we were to bag all of that plastic and put that into a normal-sized garbage bag and then line those garbage bags up side by side, they would cover every coastline of every country on the planet. That's how much plastic there is, and that's why when you go to the beach now, you not only see sand and seaweed, but you see plastic because it's everywhere. And it's being dispersed by these ocean currents that I talked about earlier, the Five Guys. So what does that mean for the marine ecosystem that we feed on? Well, the smaller the pieces of plastic, the more readily available they are further down the food chain. And in the film, we show plankton eating microplastics. And of course, plankton are food for other marine species like fish. So fish not only target the plankton, but they also target the microplastics. So that's bad enough in itself. But what makes this really horrible, particularly for us in the food chain, is that plastic has large molecules on it. And what that means is that it acts like a sponge to other toxins in the ocean. So when mining tailings and industrial runoff, agricultural runoff, pesticides, herbicides, all of these things that are the result of our lifestyle and what we use to provide our food and the metals that we need in our lifestyle end up in the ocean. They hate water, so they look for plastic to stick to. So as soon as they find a piece of plastic like that, boom, they attach to it and they stay there until they're consumed by fish because they prefer fatty tissue and oils to the plastic. So they then release from the plastic into the fish, and that's when you start to get a bioaccumulation of toxins, and that builds up because they're unable to get rid of it. So that fish is then eaten by another fish, and a shark or us, and it goes up and up the food chain, and each animal it goes into bioaccumulates not only its toxic download, but whatever plastic that animal eats. And so that goes all the way up. There's some animals that can't tell the difference between plastic and small fish or what's in their food chain. So they're consuming both. Basking shark, whales, blue whales. This was the first shoot that we went on into Sri Lanka. I've been studying these animals since I was 8 years of age, and this, for me, was one of the most important times of my documentary career because we'd found an area of Sri Lanka where they were gathering, and this is the first time that scientists have been able to study them closely. So we went there to study them, and as we were filming, we came across this big plastic floating island that was about 300 metres squared, and it was right where we were filming these animals. And within this plastic mess, there were crabs, there were seabirds, there were fish underneath that were using it as a home, and these animals feeding on krill. And of course, when they open their mouths and feed on krill, they can't tell or tell the difference between plastic, so they're unable to stop plastic going into their system. So that was horrific. So we were wondering what happens to the whales, but also what happens to us? What happens to the turtles? How far up does this stuff go? Well, what we're finding is that it's actually worse than we thought because a lot of our studies have been done on the surface of the ocean. What about at the bottom of the ocean? up to 70% of all plastics doesn't actually float, it sinks. So what we're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. It's actually much worse the deeper down you go. There's this thing called marine snow, and a lot of this contains plastic debris. When we took that submarine to the bottom of the Mediterranean, and the scientists that we engaged have been taking smaller submarines, ROVs, even further, down to 1,600 metres, this is what we're finding. We're finding fields and fields of plastic bottles. And they haven't broken up because at that level, there's no sun and there's no wind or wave action. So they're just not degrading. So the situation at the bottom of the ocean is even worse. This is Tuvalu. This is a place that's 600 miles north of Fiji. They didn't have plastic until 1976. We use Tuvalu in the film as a microcosm of planet Earth. They've been out there by themselves. They've never had plastic until 1976 when they started to set up supermarkets on the island as they gained their independence, and they started to bring in products that were wrapped in plastic. They had nowhere to put it because the island is an atoll. It's made of coral, dead coral. You can't dig into dead coral, so you can't bury it like we do in landfills. So they leave it on the ground, which is what they used to do with coconut husks and the natural detritus of the vegetables and food that they ate before plastic. The rest they burn, and that's causing a lot of problems. We put drones up to measure how bad the plastic situation was on the island. The whole north end of it, in some places, was 10 feet deep in plastic. They're living amongst it. Their pigs are eating from it. Their pigs are eating the fish that are eating from it in the burrow pits, and that's causing disease problems. We're yet to be able to prove that the connection with the disease is related to the diseases they have, but elsewhere we have been able to. So when all of this bioaccumulates and goes to the top of the food chain, who's at the top of the food chain? We are. So when it gets into us, it stays in us, particularly in men. We cannot get rid of the toxins and the chemicals related to plastic from our systems. Women can. Women can get rid of it when they give birth. And when you breastfeed a baby, your body naturally gives everything that the body has into the baby. So kids are starting off with a toxic download before they've even entered society. And the Center for Disease Control in America did a study in 2003 and found that 92.8% of every American had plastic chemicals in their system, and their kids had twice as much. 92.6%. So if you extrapolate that in America and the amount of plastic that we consume in Asia, which is worse, as Sonia was saying, Asia has the worst usage of plastic. China, Indonesia, the top 20 worst users of and recyclers of plastic. The first 6 countries are in Asia. Then you can imagine that the situation here may be worse. So what can we do? Well, Joe, Sonia, and I made a film about it. That was what we did because we thought this issue was so bad and so important that we spread the word about this. That was the way that we could do it because that's what we had to give. But what can the average person do about it? Solutions are at hand. The first thing you can do as an individual is stop using single-use plastic at home. Eliminate it from your lifestyle. Recognise it. And I guarantee you, when you get home after this talk, the same thing will happen to you as happened to me. You'll start to see it everywhere with everything that you do. Simple things like don't use a plastic straw when you go to a bar. You don't use plastic straws at home. So why do you need one at a restaurant or at a bar or somewhere like that? Plastic water bottles. You're being ripped off. Most companies, as we've found, actually take the water from the municipal service, which is tap water, which you all use, and put it into a plastic bottle and sell it back to you at 1,000 times more than what you paid for it, and you're the taxpayer, so you're paying for that anyway. What we've found, and with the studies that we've done and that some of the chemical laboratories we went to in Texas showed us, is that plastic leaches. Different coloured plastics leach more than others. Even just touching and holding a plastic water bottle will start the leaching process, let alone the mixing of the chemicals with the water inside. The more that plastic bottle travels around the world, goes from warehouse to ship to warehouse to supermarket, into your hands, maybe it stays in your car during a hot day, you drink from it all this time, all of those processes cause the estrogenic activity within those chemicals, particularly phthalates, bisphenol A's, to leach into the water or into the food you eat from the boxes that you get, the lunch boxes or the takeaways. And this is what's causing, on top of the seafood that we're eating, is causing a lot of these chemicals to build up in us. And that's causing is causing endocrine disruption problems. And that's where the human health aspect is coming back at us, that scientists are now starting to tell us about. We're starting to relate cancers, diabetes, even gender dysmorphia in young children. They're finding in America now that kids, whereas they used to reach puberty at 13 and 14 years of age, it's now at 7, 8, 9 years of age. And they believe that's associated with the chemicals caused by plastic changing the endocrine system. So it's causing a major problem. We did the film. We're also using the film to change government policy. There's a section in the film where we use Germany as a classic example. They changed legislation in 1991 and forced the manufacturers of plastic to be responsible for their product and the supermarkets to help collect it. And that's exactly what happens. And they monetized it. So if you take your plastic bottle to a supermarket, there's a machine there. You put it in, it reads a barcode, it tells you exactly what kind of plastic is there. It crushes that, puts it into the right bin, gives you 25 cents. The supermarket gets paid by the recycling company when they come to collect that plastic. The recyclers take it, they turn it back into pre-production pellets, which is what all companies buy the plastic from initially to make their plastic products. They make money out of it, and it's so successful they're importing plastic rubbish from around Europe to make to profit from. So it can be done. It's already happening. The fact that we don't use it here or in America, where they only recycle 7% of plastic, is a disgrace because the technology is there. So you can't rely on individuals to just change their mind about doing it. You have to get governments to enact legislation and help with policy change. So that's what we're doing. By showing governments what the problem is, such as body scrubs and the microbeads that are in these body scrubs, we've been able to effectively help change legislation in the UK, which is a big win for not only the UK, but it proves that the science that we've been able to deliver to governments is actually on the mark and they're taking notice of it. So already in the time that we've been making the film and we've been spreading the gospel, we're already starting to see change. Today there's a greater understanding of the problem than we've ever seen. The science is better now because other institutions are engaging in it. And so we believe that we can turn the tide and we can change the problem. But we've got to do it starting from today. So thank you very much. We appreciate you all coming. And we hope you take the message and use it wisely. Before we go, I'm going to show you a clip from the film. This is what happened in China, in Hong Kong. And this is how a group of individuals were able to change a problem that was here.
RTHK News.
Billions of plastic pellets have spilled into Hong Kong's southern waters after several containers fell off a ship when Typhoon Vicente battered Hong Kong.
6 containers full of nurdles, all of them broke up in the storm and disgorged most of their plastic bags into the sea. The vast majority broke open and the contents spilled out.
Just plastic pellets everywhere. Yeah, it looked like snow on the beach.
On the neighbouring Lamra Island, they found tons of this stuff that had come ashore. It seems the company that made the nurdles has unwittingly put their signature on it. Sinopec, a giant Chinese oil company that makes nurdles for distribution worldwide. Close by are some of the sacks also ripped open. The vast majority of them would have been carried off by the typhoon to disperse their contents far and wide.
4 of the 6 are here. So we got the one on the top here. It's the one we found at Beaufort Island. It's totally destroyed. It's a 40-foot container. We've been told it carries 1,000 sacks.
Still one that hasn't been found.
Still one out there somewhere. There's 1 million pellets plus in these bags, so every single bag saves thousands of marine species, so every bag counts at this point.
Every day, pellets are getting washed out, and trying to get that sense of urgency across.
We put a call to action out on Facebook. Go to your local beach. This is what you're looking for. These are the bags, these are the pellets. Yeah, we came up with a rapid action plan. Get a quick survey of the coast so we can see the bigger picture. And from that, then we isolated some hotspots. Which beach, Chung Chau Moi Wo, needs more people to help? Beach number 1. I set up the Facebook page, Plastic Disaster Hong Kong, and it went from 80 to 1,000 likes in a few hours. And it became pretty much the one place where all the information was being posted by everybody. And even the government were checking it. Sinopec were checking it.
Sinopec sent down people from their head office. They had general managers on the beaches.
They have been very responsible. They have been down. We had an emergency meeting about it. They're very concerned and they're offering all the assistance they can.
Thanks for helping, guys. There's some more concentrated pellets down the end there.
Once you let people know what the problem is, people have their own ideas and can contribute their own ingenuity to help solve the problem.
It's the people of Hong Kong realised the severity of the problem and just came out in their masses to help. And that is something I will never ever forget.
Ying Hung. So this is what they found in the fish farm. The pellets like this floating in the sea, and then they found the bags.
We bought 3 fish, they cut them open, and each fish had 5, 6, 7 pellets in it.
Because they can't ingest anything, they can't take in any more food. Even the supermarkets won't buy.
So it's completely destroyed the local market. Are there any questions? I spoke for too long despite the problem with my mouth, so can I answer any questions at all? And Joe's here as well, the producer. Any questions to either myself or Joe? Yes.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Sometimes people, I remember in the Blue Planet series that BBC's Blue Planet series, they refer to flotsam, which is, I guess, rubbish in the sea, as a place where marine life can sometimes gather. So do you distinguish between flotsam and this, and how, how can we position that when we're speaking to people? Because sometimes people, I'm playing devil's advocate, and I'm sort of asking for a response.
You have the producer of one of the producers on Blue Planet right here. So.
I did work on Blue Planet for 5 years.
Not specifying Blue Planet, but just saying that.
But in that, because because we were targeting anything natural. When we were looking to find things in the open ocean, which is very difficult to actually find behaviour when you've just got this open sea. So we would target areas where there were masses of coconuts and things like that. But sometimes we would find things like flying fish laying their eggs on crates and so on. So it was something. But the flotsam that we were looking at tended to be plastic. And yes, you can find lots of animals associated with it because they'll hide from the larger predators, which is almost... For them, it's almost an advantage. But the trouble is there's far too much of it, and they're starting to eat bits of it, and it breaks up, and that's when it's getting into their system. So whilst sort of in the short term a small bit might have been okay, it really isn't anymore. There's just too much. We've just seen so much of it.
Yes. Just wait 1 sec. We'll get the microphone so everyone can hear your question.
And have they checked our fish food supply to see what kind of toxins are actually in the fish that we're consuming that's coming from all this plastic in the ocean?
They've done studies in Indonesia, Europe, and in America. The early studies, that this is something that we're raising funds for the science, because the studies at the moment, they're only looking to see stomach contents. They're starting to do work on the flesh of the animals and relating that to the microplastics they found inside, but it's very, very early days. And everyone's saying, is it safe to eat market fish? I still eat fish, and I will do until somebody tells me, not to. I think we need to take a precautionary approach to this. At the moment, 25% of all the fish studied had microplastics in their stomachs. And that, to me, is enough to make us think we've got to do something about this now and not let it get any worse. But the studies are all being done. I know they're doing them in the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Science, and they're also doing it in Plymouth. So it's starting out, but it's too early to say at the moment.
Well, and especially since I think we've all been told lately to eat more wild fish than
Yes.
farmed, and then you start to wonder, well, we should be eating
Yeah,
wild
and fish stocks are down as well. So it's it's devil in the deep blue sea. Oh, literally.
I've stopped eating fish. Well, not quite.
Actually, that
about
was the
80-20.
question. You stopped eating fish?
Yeah. After what we saw and what I saw, I was just horrified. But what horrified me more was that I was...
You've got a loud voice.
I've got a microphone on. Was that I didn't realise I was part of the problem. I mean, when I started this, I felt really bad because I'd been using this product. And I was, like everyone else, a major part of the problem. And so I not only was horrified by what we were pulling out of fish and seabirds and other animals, I also felt empathetic. And as Joe said, fish stocks now are in such decline all around the world. And the tag, eating sustainable fish also has to be looked into, because there's so many different roads you can go down to quantify what's sustainable and what areas that they're now living in and what they're being affected by in terms of their environment and what's in it. So it's very hard topic to actually be able to say to somebody you should or you shouldn't eat fish. And it's, I think, probably too late for us. But what we've got to look forward to is how we solve the problem for our kids, or how we get our kids to help solve the problem.
Is there a place, or is there a way to legislate that all plastic bottles would need to have a deposit on them, so that there's an incentive for people to return them or to recycle them somehow? When I was a kid, you could collect glass bottles on the side streets of the U.S., and you collect 20 bottles and you get $1 back, which was a lot of money in the day. And it just seems like, why can't that be legislated?
I don't think people realise just what a problem it is. What we're hoping is that the film will be a real game changer, and people will see what's happening in places like Germany. It's happening in Scandinavia as well. And people will ask for it to come back, because you don't see plastic bottles lying around anywhere in Germany, because the values come back. But we want to go one step further than that and actually stop people from buying their water in bottles in the first place. It's almost like, a two-step thing, but the goal is to stop it, because we get perfectly good water out of our taps.
But this, you go into a Watson's or a Manning's here, and every shelf is filled to the brim with shampoo bottles and soap and gel, and it's everything. Everything we buy, we use up the contents and we throw it away, and it's all wrapped in plastic.
You can use solid soap. That's what I started using again, the old cake bars. And they're starting to use solid to make solid shampoos and conditioners as well. Excuse me. So what we hope is that people will start to, once they get this on board, they'll start to develop things. They'll start to develop alternatives. But getting people on board, they have to know there's a problem. And so many people are so used to this disposable lifestyle until we point it out. And then everyone who's seen the film will come to the talks. it's like a light goes on. They suddenly think, oh, yeah, what am I doing? You know, why do we buy our butter in tubs? I buy mine in paper now, just like we used to.
Okay, one last question. Can this film get onto Netflix or Apple TV so people can see it for free, like before the flood?
In January, you'll be able to download the film.
It's cinematic release in January, and then it'll be downloadable globally, streaming. So, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Craig. Small token of our appreciation, and I hope you can share with your parents.
Great.
And also to let you know, we still have tickets available for Saturday showing. Some people have return tickets, and so please see my staff or log online, and we'll hope to see you tonight or on Saturday. And thank you both.
Can I add my thanks to Asia Society, BMP, and everyone who helped us, and everyone came along today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks
Enjoy the
very much,
rest of the
Alice.
afternoon. Thank you.